Welcome to the Chess Angle. This is not your typical chess podcast. If you're an amateur or club-level player, the Chess Angle is for you. Our content is aimed at busy adults who are serious about the game but have limited study time. Featured guests include both amateur and titled players alike. And now, here's your host, director of the Long Island Chess Club, Neil Bellon.
Welcome, everybody. I am here with National Master Nick Panico. Nick is a friend, a fellow Long Island chess player, fellow educator. So, Nick, it's good to see you. I know we have a very cool list of topics to discuss. So thanks for being on the podcast. Good to see you, my friend.
Yes, Neil, thank you. And, I just want to take a little quick intro and say thank you, for doing this podcast. I do a lot of road trips at different times of the year, and I listen to very few chess podcasts, and yours is one of them. And yours, I can't, for a local club perspective, for you to do what you're doing, it's amazing. I know you have some, GMs that you've interviewed and other title players, club players, and it's like you do a good rounded mix of everything. So, I think that, what you're doing for the local chess community and, even broader than that, because now it reaches out to everyone. I think that, you deserve a lot of recommendation, accommodation and, gratitude, for what you do.
I appreciate that, Nick. Very, very kind words. Thank you. Yeah, I do enjoy it. I do try to keep it practical and have a good mix, but I appreciate it. So you're a fellow teacher, Nick. I know you were teaching science for a while, kind of going in and out. I know we spoke about that. Now, I haven't spoken to you in quite some time, so we're kind of catching up ourselves. But tell me, what's been happening as far as your teaching career in the schools?
Yeah, I guess right before I go into the teaching, just it's actually interesting because my education, my teaching, it's kind of related to my chess, both individually and, teaching as well, and a lot of my chess experiences. And, my education in science is actually like two different pathways, and it kind of relates to chess. One is a traditional, from the approach from the universities, getting degrees, which I have a bachelor's of, science and biology. I have a master's in secondary education with certification in bio, and I have a master's in science and bio as well. So I have those degrees, and I've taught, since 2005, but both in public and private school settings. In 2010, I was teaching from 2005 to 2010 at a private school, and due to a lack of state funding, they closed our centers. And then I went back in 2011, got certified in earth science, and I took 21 credits at Suffolk in one semester. I just wanted to get it all over with, and I did that, and I started teaching public again. And then in a few different places, I taught in Georgia for 1 year. I came back to New York, and I was teaching in Suffolk County. And then 2020, when we had to finish the school year virtually, then I was let go, and I was 1 year away from tenure. And unfortunately, I haven't taught, since then in a public school setting. I've just been doing some private stuff. And so, it's possible I am thinking, at this stage in my life, not having tenure, and I don't have any kids, I don't have any children. I'm pretty much, free to go where I want to. And I'm thinking of possibly relocating in the summertime. So we'll see, where it goes to. But so with my traditional approach for education, I taught earth science, and I don't have a degree in that. And a lot of that was from my independent self-taught approach to learning. I love to learn. I love to share information, and I think you could relate that to that as you being a teacher as well. This isn't a business where we're getting rich. This isn't something lucrative. It's hard work. We're dealing with the public, the parents. We're trying to do the best we can for our communities, and so that's why I really love teaching. And with the earth science stuff, I got into it. I was into weather my whole life, and in 2003, I started studying weather and meteorology. In 2004, I actually started storm chasing. I actually started chasing hurricanes, and I'm doing that up to this day. And I built a huge weather library. I was running a big weather platform on social media. I stopped doing that a couple of years ago. And so that's more of an independent approach from a traditional university approach. And I think that when I look at chess, when I look back and reflect on chess, I think both, and we'll talk about this, through study methods, things like that, I think that you have to be intertwined. And I think if you could adopt a philosophy where you're doing both, like you may see more gains in just being hardcore one way versus the other. Um, so that's just a little bit, background about my education and my teaching. I have taught, I've had private students, and I've taught at Stony Brook for a summer camp for scholastics. 2005 to 2006, about 5 nights a week, I was teaching after school chess programs. So, I've, taught both science and chess in a wide range of, settings.
Okay, and what about any current tournaments or any chess endeavors lectures? Are you doing any playing at all?
Currently, no. Actually, no. Actually, the other day I looked on UFCF, the player search, and I haven't played in about 5 years. And again, okay, last 3 years, the pandemic hasn't been obviously easy over the board to play. But in 2018, I played in one rapid event, and that was it for the year. 2017, I think I played in 3 rapids. 2016 was only 2 rapids, and I was always fairly active when I was playing. Of course, I wasn't anything like a Jay Bonin, right? Or Boris Privman, late Boris Privman. He passed away, unfortunately. Great guy. And, but I was still fairly active. But I think that, I don't know. I guess maybe once I made National Master, I kind of slowed down after that. Maybe I looked at it, I reached my goal, and, just doing some other life things, some other hobbies that I got into. And, nowadays, I'll play on chess.com. I'll follow the tournaments. I'll see the updates because all the players and content providers are on Twitter. So I'll just look at, my Twitter stream and, get the updates for the tournament and, look at the standings. And that's really it. No current chess coaching or teaching, as of the last couple of years.
Now, are you studying at all? I mean, I know you said you're not really playing much, but some guys get into like studying and sort of still developing, even though they're not active as a player, or you just kind of doing other things?
Yeah, I would say that, currently, I'm not studying at all. I don't think I've studied in years, I would say, maybe if I look at a game, I don't know if that's really classified as studying, maybe not, maybe for, beginners and things like that, that could be classified as studying. But then with the higher you get up, I think in playing strength, I think it has to be more regimented, I think. And I don't know if I ever had a specific regimen, like even when I first started learning. I think I was more of a player than like a student, I would say. Of course, when I first started, my dad taught me and my brother back in 1991. And we studied back then, because me and my brother, we were beginners. We just knew how the pieces moved. We didn't know, anything else. We didn't know what checkmate was. We didn't know stalemate. We didn't know about exchange sacrifices, things like that. So, he went over, we did 2 books with him, Chess Fundamentals by Capablanca, and My System by Nimzowitsch. And then after that, he got, this was back in, again, 91, before all this technology, and he got ChessBase and Mega Database, and we started building like an opening repertoire. And we would see all the novelties, like the history of the opening, and this is something that maybe like Kasparov, was doing back then, kind of something like that. And I don't know. I mean, I think the approach was too much, and like, I really didn't. For a 14 to 1600 player. But I think my dad wanted to teach me and my brother like a lesson, with chess, because he was playing in tournaments in the 80s. We weren't. We were kids. And, I think the lesson was like, just to show that the amount of effort that you put into something, the results will show as, a reflection of that effort. And, at the time, my brother and my dad, his wife, they were D4 players, and I never liked D4. I don't know. I was always playing E4. That's what came to me. So in a way, I had to study my own openings by myself. And I would have to use his ECO. There's like 5. There's an A, B, C, D, and E. They're like textbooks with just the variations, and they'll give you like footnotes and like a record, equal, plus over equal, dubious, and so on. And then there was games in the informants that I could look at. They were cataloged from the ECO code to the informants. Again, this was all before the digital age. And so I would learn some openings, like that. Sometimes I'd buy some books. I would look at them. I would skim through them. But I wasn't moving the pieces over the board. Now, you have everything, again, digitally, where you can do it on your phone. It's just unbelievable how in, 30 years, how things have changed. And, so, I don't know. I think it was, when my dad was teaching me and my brother, it was regimented. But then, once we got out of high school, we were kind of on our own for playing. My brother stopped playing and I continued, and I wasn't doing anything at all. It was more about pattern recognition, I think. And I think I made a lot of improvements like that. But again, I know there was a lot of, when I was playing at the Marshall Chess Club, and a lot of great results I was having. Like 17, I was 1700, and I had the black pieces. And I remember one tournament, round one, I drew I.M. Walter Shipman. And this is a player that played with Bobby Fischer back in the day in the Old Manhattan Club. And I drew him, fairly easily. And, some things like that. So again, the results showed, and, so, and then I would study at times, learning new openings, looking at a few games, but it was never regimented in terms of a schedule. Like I never had like specific goals of what I expected out of the openings, or devoting a number of hours a week to that. I never had anything like that at all. I never really had any coaching. So I think that was something maybe that was lost, I would say, in developing as a chess player, I guess, at a young age. And then, I learned, first tournament was in 1992, and we went to Texas, me and my brother, and we played in the unrated section, and we both tied for the trophy. It was a trophy. Normally you can't split a trophy, but since we were brothers, we both took it home together. And with I think the cash prize, was split. But we got our provisional ratings, and it was like I was in 10th grade. So 3 years of high school went by quick, and we would play at the Marshall Chess Club, and it went quickly. And then before you know it, we're out of high school, and then it was kind of developing as a chess player fairly quickly. And I think playing at the Marshall Chess Club with the strong competition facilitated, moving up pretty quickly. I think I went from 1400 to about 1700 in about 1 year.
Yeah, I want to jump on one thing you said, Nick, because it's interesting. I'm hearing a lot of this lately, especially with some guests. Not every strong player, let's say players who achieved a rating of 2000 or higher, a lot of them, including yourself, based on what you just said, quite a few of them did not really have a regimented study plan, because I think the conventional wisdom is that, well, they must have, but you're hearing a lot of players with high ratings saying that really wasn't the case, and they would just study things they liked, they would bop around, because you have players, a lot of adult improvers and whatnot, who are like, okay, for 10 minutes, I'm going to do Puzzle Rush, and then for 20 minutes, I'm going to do, that type of thing, that really sort of structured, like Excel spreadsheet version of like a study plan, but it doesn't work for everybody. And I think not everybody needs that. Like some players might need that. And I think it'll work for some players, but not for others. But I think it's interesting that it's sort of wrong to think that, well, every strong player must have had a regimented study plan. And it's not really the case. Everyone's path is a little bit different.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that as an adult improver, even if you're improving, okay, scholastically at a young age, that, if you're looking at chess, if you're active in it, playing, looking at new ideas, like, you're going to improve. The question is that the regimented schedule with a coach, is there a real specific goal that you're trying to reach? Are you trying to learn a certain opening at a certain level? Are you just trying to broaden your understanding and get to a certain level? Are you trying to become the best rapid player, right? So you're playing dubious positions that you're super familiar with. So it's specifically the regimented schedule, I would say, depending on the goal, because I think anybody can improve. I certainly believe in that, and I think I could still improve if I, want to put a little time into it. I don't see a reason why nobody at any age can't improve their knowledge and things of that nature. So, now if you're looking at a prodigy from 4 years old, and you're thinking about, oh well, maybe they could be a possible world champion. Well, then that's a totally different type of mentality you have to put into a regimented plan, right? The best coaches, the best training, eating, sleeping, the whole kit and caboodle. And same thing with sports, athletics and arts, music, theatrics. I think it all goes hand in hand. Anyone has super extreme goals, that they're going to have to work really hard and dial everything in, because it becomes like a science at that point.
You went through a phase, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, where you chose only to enter open events or play in events where it was just higher rated opponents and avoid club events. Am I remembering that correctly? Where you kind of just decided to play up or something like that?
I mean, in terms of trying to eventually get to National Master, I would say yes. That was, a part of it, because I felt that I would always put more effort in when I was playing stronger players. And I figured that even though I like rapid, I like blitz, I figured that to try to make some significant gains, the slower time controls ultimately were the best to make that goal. The strong competition, trying to go over my games, trying to work on some of my weak areas that were weak. So I first started, like I said, I began playing at the Marshall Chess Club on the weekends, maybe twice a month in 4-round Swisses, and the competition was very strong. I remember a lot of those tournaments. I'm going 0 for 4, 0 for 4. Finally I'm getting half or 1 point out of 4, and gradually moving up a little bit. And then I started, in high school we started playing locally, at some of the local clubs, and there, it was more you didn't have the super high rated plays, maybe 2,300 and over, not as many of them. But you had, a lot of 2,100s, experts, 2,200s. You had some of them. You had 1,900s. You had a good variety. So the club, local clubs kind of taught me to be well balanced, which for a long time I wasn't. My results were all over the place. And but ultimately, in trying to get to master, I would say, yeah, I tried to play in some out-of-state tournaments, the slower controls and things like that, just to take it a little more seriously. But that didn't happen until I was like 36 years old. Just so I felt like, I could, if I'm going to continue to play, let me try to get national master, have a goal, and just do a few small things that I could do to make the difference from then what I did decades ago when, I was playing on and off, and not having any real goals, I would say. So
And as far as your openings, if I remember correctly, I'm laughing as I say this, you got up to about 2000 or so playing mostly gambits with white. Like, is that true or something like that? Like,
sure. So, my results when I started playing at the Marshall Chess Club and when I was like, 14, 15, 1600, I was playing E4. And, there's so much. I remember just like, playing like the French defense. Against the French defense, I would play the Tarrasch, which was 3, knight E4, E6, D4, D5, 3, knight D2. And I always like kind of knew some of the lines for knight f6, e5, knight fd7, maybe f4, c5, knight g to f3, things like that. But then let's say on move 3 that my opponent played c5, e4, e6, d4, d5, knight d2, c5. I didn't know how to handle the structure. I didn't understand how to handle the pawn tension in the center, what was good isolated pawns, what weren't. I was just getting clobbered. And that was just the French defense. Same thing would happen in some of the lines in the Caro-Can, the open Sicilian. And I started realizing, well, I'm not prepared to play this E4 stuff. And so my rating was still improving. It was 17, 1800. And then I saw a player at the Marshall Chess Club, Lev Zilberman, and he was playing gambits, and I'm watching him get good results with them. And I'm like, and I was always probably stronger, at a young age, I was stronger tactically than positionally. I just didn't understand anything about really, positional chess or end games or structure. So I started trying out some of these gambits, and sure enough, I started having good results with them. And with white, I remember I was starting to beat some masters. I remember beating I think last week or a couple of weeks ago, Jay Bonin mentioned a FIDE master named Leslie Braun on the interview, and he was a strong FM. I remember one game I played him. I played the Deemer, and sacrifice the pawn for activity. Kind of, the Deemer was kind of like this last romantic era type of opening. You sacrifice the pawn, you open up the F file, you're pitting with bishop G5, you put your light square bishop on D3, queen E1, H4, basically like this guerrilla attack. And I remember I had a game against, and I was playing this in not just rapid, I was playing this in slow chess over the board. The slow chess, I remember a game with him, I was able to have a double rook sacrifice on F6, and I won the game. And then I started, playing some other plays, getting good results. And then I said, okay, what can I do as black? And one opening, I started playing the England Gambit, which is D4, E5. And then D takes E5, knight C6, knight F3, and then you play queen to E7. So you're tempting white to kind of defend the pawn on E5. And if he plays bishop F4, there's queen B4 check. And this was before the age of strong computers, and there wasn't really any books on this. And And I got away with it. I was beating some, decent players, stronger than myself with this. And so I kept playing those openings, so in hindsight, was that a good thing for my chess development? I would say no, right? Because a lot of different aspects of the game, I never really developed in. I got better at tactics because of these openings, but not in other areas of the game. And I look back and I reflect and I laugh to myself. I'm like, how could I have gotten to like over 2,000 playing these gambits? Because nowadays it would never work. Maybe someone could get to 17, 1800, but if someone knows that and I was playing it regularly, just like everyone, if somebody was getting paired against me, yep, I'm playing Nick Panico, it's going to be a deemer. Like nowadays, like there's so much information and the computers are so strong that these gambits are pretty much refuted. And it's kind of a shame. There's people that played the Deemer their whole life. There used to be a Blackmore Deemer Gambit World magazine. It went out in the mail every month. I mean, they were the people were like, some of these players devoted their lives, like Tim Pursa. There was a few of them. I think Lev even wrote some articles in there and submitted games. And then all of a sudden the computers come on and you just find out that this opening is like complete garbage. Like it's so refutable. And, after just, one or two easy variations. And that's what would happen now. If someone knew I was playing one of these openings, they would just look at it and after a half hour have a great line. And, I'd be lucky to draw the game, So it's just in different era now.
Yeah, we know a lot more about defense and, like you said, with just computers and everything and all the available databases. And we know, I guess, a lot more how to refute it. But I mean, that's still interesting how successful it was for you. And a lot of it is what? Just the fact that you're gambiting, you're creating an unbalanced, unfamiliar position. You're forcing your opponent to think for himself right off the bat, and that leads to more mistakes. I mean, is that basically the gist of it?
Yeah, definitely. That's absolutely the truth. And back then it was easier because of the less preparation. And now you see what's even happening now at the stronger level of chess. You don't see these I guess you could say games for Tal-like games where there's combinations and tactics. And now it's just, someone basically, it's all at the top level. Again, it is at the top level where it's all computer analysis and someone makes a mistake and then the other player positionally just grinds them down and then it's over. So you don't see, it's a total different type of game. And I guess that's what Fischer saw like chess was eventually going to and why he came up with 960 or, Fischer random, which, I do like. I do think it's a great thing and I have experience in it. And I've played, I think 2 years ago, I was fairly active on chess.com in Fischer random. I think I was like in the top 50 for the United States playing on chess.com, for the ratings for official random. And I think because I had a lot of different experience with different openings, I could see a position. It's like pattern recognition. And I say, oh, I could play like a French defense structure with E6, D5, C5, but my bishop is on G8. Where does this bishop go? And I'm like, oh, okay, I could just play H6 and play bishop H7 and get the bishop in the game that way, but have the pawns and the other pieces come out like in a French tradition. So I think that with the opening preparation, it's the game is just different these days, and I guess it's why Carlsen is pushing for a change in the World Championship format. Things along those lines because it's harder for him to win games. I'm sure he still wants to be recognized, right? I mean, he devoted his whole life to chess. He wants to continue to play for the World Championship, but the amount of effort and work, the value in that, he's not seeing it anymore. And I think that's why he's walking away and maybe trying to change the game to, again, different aspects, more rapid, things like that, because then it becomes not so much preparation, but more of talent. And since he has the edge, most likely, he's more talented than these other top players still, he'll be able to, win a match. So I think it's in his best interests. That's where he's trying to shift the game to. Is it also because they're trying to gain more interest in chess and fans? Possibly. But again, the content creators online and, it's in the end, it's a business, right? This is a business. And does it really serve the best interests of the new chess players, the local chess players? I don't know. I'm not sure, so it's, again, a lot of this online stuff, it's still fairly new. And, we're in that, the young kids, this is their generation, I guess, when they become our age, there'll be a better understanding of the dynamics of it and what's best.
Yeah, and they're also pushing these quicker time controls for both over the board tournaments and online. So that's going to be an upcoming solo episode of mine discussing sort of this attack on classical time controls. I'm kind of putting that together. I have some thoughts on that because that seems to be one of the angles they're taking to make the game more popular and attract more people is, they don't want these, 3, 4, 5, 6 hour games. I mean, I get it doesn't have to be that much, but how much are you going to like lower it? You don't want it to be to the point where like there's no such thing as classical time controls anymore. I mean, I don't think it's going to get to that point, but I'm just wondering what direction this is going to go in.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I still, playing, the kind of the pathway to National Master, playing in those tournaments, 40 moves, 2 hours, 1 hour sudden death, a game could go 6 hours. And you have two of them in a day. And I've had days, I remember some days at the amateur team tournaments, which actually is going on right now this weekend. And, sometimes in some of these tournaments, you're playing 11 hours a day. And you're just like wiped out. You're so tired. And, the physical aspects come into play. And I liked it. I always enjoyed it. And I remember I had a friend, Darius Poor. He was a local player. He was an expert, and he played in England a lot. And he said there was tournaments in England decades ago where they were playing game 150, which is the game could go to 5 hours. It was just sudden death, game 150. So it was a 5 hour game. And he said there was weekend tournaments where sometimes they were playing 3 games of that in a day. So 15 hours sometimes.
No, that's just not normal. One of the reasons I don't play in these weekend tournaments, first of all, it's too much of a commitment for me. I'd have to give up too much. It's like after working all week and okay, see you later. I would have too many things on my mind. I wouldn't be able to clear my head mentally. Like I would just be too distracted. And my opinion, it's not normal to play that much chess in one day and over the course of like 4 or 5 days. So if I did it, I would take buys to the point where I was playing maybe one game a day, but then the argument is you're spending all this money and the entry fee is the same and you're only playing half your games. Now, if they made the time control kind of a classical time control, but quicker, but still a slow game, almost like a club control, like our club's time control is game 90 with a 10-second delay. Now, yeah, so that's like about 3 hours-ish per game. Now, if you have 2 of those a day, that's not too bad. But like you said, if you're playing 10 or 11 hours a day. So that's just why I'm a club person at this point, just because right now with my schedule and everything, I just can't make that type of commitment to those major events. And even if I did, it would end up being very contrived and I would feel like I wouldn't perform well. So it's just not, right now, that's just the place I'm at in my life right now. I might get back to it, but I think there's such a thing as time controls that are too fast or too slow. You need that sweet spot. You don't want to play in a tournament where it's like game 45. That's like junk chess to me, or those action like game 30. But yet you don't want a game on the other extreme where it's going to be like a 6-hour game. That's why I like game 90. I think it's the perfect balance or around game 90 because it's slow enough that you can play a thoughtful, strategic game, but it's fast enough that, you're not wearing yourself out and you're not playing like an 8-hour game.
Yeah, no, I agree with it. I have experience with the game 90. For years, I played in the Long Island Industrial Chess Club, and that was a game 90 time control. And it was one game on Friday night, and it was a team event, and and that was great experience. I love playing there. I love playing with teams. I love the team events more than.
Was that unrated or was that rated?
It was not USCF rated. They would for new players provisionally they would use your USCF rating, your current USCF rating, and it was rated the same way. The calculations were done as the same as the USCF, and they had they were in operation over 30 years, and they had USCF masters that played there. George Berg played there. I think Roger LaFleur played there a few times. Maybe Tony Renna. So Glenn Klopfenstein, some other masters, and experts, Lenny Chipkin. 2100s, 2000s, and you're playing on the team, so you're playing on board order, and so that's how in 92 I played there. My dad took me and my brother there, and again, this was industrial. This was companies like Sperry, Grumman had two different teams, and Ademco, Alumni. There was, all different teams, like 10, 12 teams. And so I remember when my dad's friend who taught my dad how to play, Willie Johnson, he was an expert. We went there. And I guess me and my brother, we were the only kids in like 91, 92. And I guess it was like it was like a Friday night thing for the guys to get out there and play the league. And I guess they saw me and my brother as beginners, and they like weren't maybe welcome to kids. And it was one, I think, individual said to my dad, he's like, these kids can't play, and what are they doing here, And Willie told the guy, he's like, just wait, give him a few years, just wait, and they'll probably be stronger than you, and things like that. And I played there, 2 years, my dad and Willie and my brother, and then I started playing by myself, after high school with other players, and great time. I love the team aspect, and I love the team events more than individual, and I won a lot of titles, awards there, and for 30 years I actually became the only club-rated master. I was the only player to actually get an established rating over 2,200. And that was, I think that was like 2 years before they stopped. This was going back about maybe 9, 10 years ago. And there was a lot of strong players. So, it just felt great to do, and, Bob Rizzo ran the club, and Bob Standing, he passed away. And, it was at Huntington Library, and, good competition, and, went the whole season. What was like an academic year, went from September to June. And, they did a Woods night, and, people took it very seriously, and it helped me. I think that helped me get to National Master, because if I could figure, I took it very seriously, those games, because I took those games more seriously, I think, than individual tournaments, than money tournaments, because it's like the team. You have the team, like, you're responsible, no matter what board you're playing. And, so I remember, playing some of the players and being able to prepare for them. I think one point, as I was making the run for National Master, George Berg, I had between the club there and Marshall and local USCF tournaments, I had a score of 9 out of 10 games against George Berg.
Yeah, strong player. Yeah,
who's he's a national master himself. Yeah, I had 9 out of 10. I mean, that's just standard deviations tell you something's not right. That shouldn't happen, that margin. And the one game I lost, there was actually a ruling at the Nassau Chess Club that I was unfamiliar with. There's a wild game, and we were both low on time. George called my flag down. George made his 40th move. I was about to make my 40th move. My flag fell, and he called my flag down, but he didn't record the last couple of his moves. So how could you call someone's flag down if they haven't recorded the moves? Do you know anything about that, the ruling on a situation like that? So, I mean, I was winning that game, and I had a great tactic. I could have, but I lost the game because the director said that, oh, no, it doesn't matter if you're down, like, that's it. Like, so what do you know about that? If it's the last move where one player made the 40th move, the other one didn't, one's flag falls, but the other guy, maybe his flag didn't fall because he wasn't right. I was writing the moves down. He wasn't, because it was going to another time control after that.
Okay. See, the way it works, Nick, I ask the questions. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, here's the funny thing. I'm going to make a comment first, and then I'll answer that. The comment is, I don't know why sudden death time control isn't just standard. Like, I don't get the whole, like, multiple time controls, like 40 moves in this and 30 moves. Just make the whole game one time. Like, why are we complicating things? Just say it's game 90. It's game in 2 hours. But, like, chess players have to make everything difficult. I'm sure there's a reason. It has to do with, because, like, by a certain number of moves, the games will end quicker or something. I'm sure there's a reason. Like, someone's going to email me like, Neil, don't you realize, blah, blah, blah. But for the ease of the players and the TD, I just think sudden death time controls with a time delay, game 90 with a 10-second delay, game in 2 hours with a 10-second delay. So much easier, so much cleaner. Like, that should be universal. Just my sort of opinion there. But to answer your question, I'm going to be honest. I don't know, because I haven't dealt with that. I really just direct at my own clubs. It's like out of sight, out of mind. I haven't dealt with that, which, by the way, is another beautiful thing about sudden death time controls, because move numbers don't matter. Now, I know if you're claiming a draw by threefold repetition, you have to have the moves detailed on your score sheet to back it up. That I know. But to answer your question, if you're claiming someone didn't make enough moves within the certain time control, I'm going to guess that you would have to have a score sheet to support that, because how could you make the claim otherwise?
Right. That was my claim. Right.
Now, I believe the clocks, like you may say, well, some clocks have a move counter on it, but I'm pretty sure, I'm totally winging it right now, I'm pretty sure that's not allowed to be used for that purposes. You're not allowed to say, well, according to the move counter on the clock, you didn't make enough moves because there was some issues with that. I don't think you can use that for a claim. I might be wrong. I'm 80% sure I'm right about that. But I would imagine logically, if you're going to say, okay, well, you didn't make 40 moves, you didn't make the time control, you would have to have documentation to support that, because how else can you make the claim? That's my guess. But like I said, because my world is sudden death time controls, you don't have to worry about stuff like that. So I really haven't checked the rule book on that in a while, but it's interesting. But now that you said it, of course, I'm going to look it up when we're done. I'm guessing what I said is correct, but I could totally be wrong. I think you have to have a score sheet that would support that. I also think it's correct that you can't use the move counters on the clock to support that. But as I said, I would not bet money on that right now. I'd have to look that one up. But that's why I like sudden death, because these issues are non-existent, right?
I agree. Yep.
Yeah, you don't have to deal with that which doesn't happen. So if it's sudden death time control, move numbers are irrelevant. It's so much cleaner. So sorry, that was a little bit of a rant. Didn't mean for that to be a rant. But just my thoughts on that. So, but I'd have to look that up. What are your thoughts, Nick, on online chess? I think you touched on this a little bit, but like, do you play a lot of online chess? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad?
I think that it's still fairly new in a way. And there's still some kinks that have to be worked out, I would say, with it. But there's no doubt that this online chess has led to a chess explosion. We've seen it really culminate the last couple of years. One with the pandemic, with the lockdowns, no over-the-board chess. And at the same time, you have the Queen's Gambit released on Netflix, which I did watch, and I did enjoy it. I hope they make a second season. So you have and then the online chess, you have all these things, and then, it's a really big explosion. So the online chess definitely has helped the promotion, sponsors, things like that. There's no doubt about it. And, more kids are playing. The numbers are up for enrollment, I think, for after school programs, schools, tournaments, things of that nature. So I think that's great. But again, and I think I mentioned this before, the question has to be answered, though, like, are the needs being met for, the beginners and the amateurs as well? Because in the end, it's a position where we have these major companies, you have these top professional players, Magnus Carlsen, he's linked up with chess.com now, and these, I forgot the name, the freshwater or the some tournaments, water tournaments, and it's like a Grand Prix network, and it's all, different, it's kind of similar to what happened with, I guess, Kasparov and Karpov back in the 90s with PCA and FIDE, how there was a rift. Now we're just seeing a lot more sponsors than back then. So it's like on steroids now. But and the professionals are making money, right? I mean, you have commentators, content creators that aren't professional players, a couple of them that are making a career out of this. And there's one top player who is also doing this, and he's still playing actively, professionally, and doing this as the highest content creator, and that's really a unique position. So they're able to generate a lot of revenue. In the old days with ICC, and I'm sure a past person that you had on the podcast, Brian Karen, could answer more than I could about ICC. Back then, there was professionals that were doing lecture videos on openings, going over things. But the amount of money that they were making can't be nowhere near as today as what the professionals have available to them. Right? There's different platforms. They get to pick their schedules and whatnot. I just heard recently that Maurice Ashley actually is stepping down from commentating. And I'm not sure what he's going into, books or coaching or specifically. But I know he said he's taking a break.
Yeah, he posted. Yeah, he's one of my favorites too. As a sidebar, I absolutely love listening to Maurice Ashley, because I remember when I saw Karyakin, I think I'm pronouncing it right this time. When I saw Karyakin play Magnus, it was 2016. I think it was that match. He wasn't one of the main commentators, but he was a guest commentator. I think it was like the final round or one of the final two rounds. And I'm listening. I'm like, he should have been doing the whole thing, because he's funny. Yeah, he's so funny. He's engaging, and he allows you to understand what's happening for like amateur players without being patronizing. He's just a fantastic speaker But he's moving on to, I guess, bigger and better things, as they say. He did post some information on Twitter. I don't have it in front of me. I just remember, it was a couple of weeks ago or so that it was pretty recent that he announced that.
Yeah, if you could ever get him on if you could ever get him on the podcast, he's great. Actually, I've met him. I know him personally. So my dad knew Willie Johnson from the Long Island Railroad, and they were playing on a railroad, and Willie was older. They called Willie Pops Johnson. And it was kind of like a black community in New York City that some strong players. And Maurice was young at the time, and Willie was helping Maurice. He would buy him some books, look after him, and Maurice became a strong player. And they have a great relationship. Kind of like a surrogate, like dad or uncle, I would say. But yeah, Maurice is great. But with the online chess, I have always enjoyed sitting, like going to like a hotel, when I'm going to the out-of-state tournaments, playing in a ballroom or playing locally, and the experience of it, right? That you get to see some other games if you want to get up from your own game and spectate and walk around. And the dynamics of, making the moves over the board, the tension, kind of there's the poker, right, or the psychology aspect of chess, where you could see, someone's in trouble, how are they reacting, and maybe you use that information for future games, or you remember certain points of the game. And that was something I never really thought too much about until I got a little bit older. And then I started using that, and it started helping me again. Like I was saying with George Berg, how I got 9 out of 10 points. I knew what he was playing. I was preparing for those games, and I would get a time on the lead on the clock, and so on. So that was as I became older. But you don't get that experience if you're not really sitting across the board from them. And in some ways, the physical endurance. Okay, if you're playing the longer time controls, that becomes a part of the game, and and that's missing with online chess. No matter, you're not going to get that aspect of the game, no matter what. And right now, I'm just thinking about the amateur team tournament, which is going on right now in the Parsippany Hotel, and it's over. They got now, I think, over 300 something teams. It's like 1,600 people, and in a way, it's like. I think they shortened the time control a little bit from what it used to be. Those are no longer 6-hour games. And that's like a reunion. It's not a money tournament. It's just again, it's a team aspect, for families and things like that. And again, a lot of these experiences, with some of the tournaments, if you do want to locally, there's CCA tournaments that you could go out of state and see new places. Maybe you want to play one round a day and go hiking or do something different, with the family. Like those options are there when you have over the board chess. In terms of doing other things besides chess. And with online, that aspect, that's all taken out. So and I think that with the recent explosion, I think that again, like what you're doing with the club locally, it's growing, right? I'm sure you've seen like a uptick in enrollment, and so you're doing things right. Maybe it's the podcast, it's a combination of things. That you're getting new players to come.
I don't know if it's the podcast, but I mean, although people do like it, but I think it's, and it's funny. I've mentioned this before. I was worried about the opposite, because with the boom in online play, as you mentioned before, from the Queen's Gambit, pandemic, yada yada, I thought that people were going to think playing online was the new normal. But people realize there's nothing like over the board. It's just the tactile experience of it, and just facing an opponent, just playing in person, not having to stare at a screen. And I think that's that's one of the reasons why the numbers are so high, is that people realize that there are limitations with playing online. And also people wonder, with online chess and, there's, cheating things. We'll talk about that. They wonder who's really on the other end, what's really happening. So I guess they feel over the board, they have a little more control. You're actually seeing your opponent. It's just a whole different, it's nothing like playing online. Playing online, I mean, I don't do it that much anymore. I usually just, I use the study materials more than actually playing, and I'm much happier that way. I think online is a tool. I think it has its benefits, but you can't compare it to just playing over the board. And like you said before, it's the whole experience of it. It's just the fact that you're going to a club. It's not just that you're playing a game, but you can walk around, you talk to the guys. Like before we start, Dan Levin always has a position. He's showing everybody, it's almost like, the guys hang out. It's a scene. It's a scene. It's a whole thing. Whereas online is just very sterile.
Yes. For sure, absolutely, and again, the whole social aspect too. Like if you get there before or after, you can go over the games with your opponents, and before maybe some people are playing blitz, and you don't have any of that in these online tournaments. And again, even if again, this is local level. Obviously, the professionals, they have to do whatever they can because it's their income, it's their career, which I understand. But I wonder, what some of their thoughts are. The very top players that are. Maybe a little bit older than Magnus Carlsen, who grew up without the online events, but now they're transitioning because they're still active and they do play some of these online stuff. So I wonder if from someone that's seen like both, like what's their thoughts about it. But I mean, who in 5-10 years maybe it'll be a totally different situation.
Yeah, a lot of them are turning, as you mentioned before, to content creation too. They retire or they semi-retire from playing, and then it's just content creation. And if they already are kind of a name, they can build a following pretty quickly, and then they'll get some private students. I just want to jump on something else now before I forget. What are your thoughts on the current cheating culture we have in chess? Because it's definitely a thing. And what I'm finding, I just wanted to make a comment, and then I'll let you run with it. A number of guests on this podcast and others have said they now have students who are like cheating during lessons. I mean, that's how bad it is, because we think of cheating in chess. We think, okay, chess cheating, that's for the big money tournaments, right? They want to get a prize, but now people are cheating for rating. We had one cheater at the club. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we get to like sandbagging. But with the online cheating, you now have chess teachers where they're giving their students like a puzzle, or they're doing a practice game, and they're cheating during the lesson now. So it's not just in these big money tournaments, it's now pervasive with all sorts of chess instruction and chess play. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on this whole thing, or your experiences.
That's definitely interesting, and that a student, a kid, would cheat at their coach, giving them a puzzle, in that environment.
This is like 3 or 4 different coaches who have said this. That's just who I spoke to. So it's probably more.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And I think I have some thoughts about this, and maybe you could relate to it because you're a teacher as well. That we're seeing at a young age. Basically, we have toddlers coming out of the crib now with their devices. They have their iPhones, their iPads. I mean, I've seen it with my niece, nephew, how they pick up on this so quickly. The games now and the visual, and they're learning these things at a young age. So when they go to school and or middle school and research, there's no more going to the library, to the card catalog and finding your research, or going on the database to get your journal articles. Now everything's online. So when they have a problem, they want to find something, it's Google. So it's almost like that's the way, that they've learned to learn to get an answer, is just by typing it in and seeing what comes up. The experience is gone, the research is being gone, at a very, fundamental level. What does that mean for the future, for future researches in the medical field, or in the Department of Defense, things of that nature? But, if the kids are learning this at a young age with these devices, and I've seen it in school settings as well, where you have students who have disabilities. You have students that are designated ADD. You have students that are designated ADHD. Do I believe that genetically some students are predispositioned to these attention deficit disorders? Yes, I do. I'm a biologist. I believe that genetics does play a role. But at the same time, I believe there's a lot of them where it's the environment that's putting them over the edge. If they weren't in that environmental setting, they would not be designated or have these conditions. I think there's a bit neurologically, I think that we're seeing the technology at a young age and what it's doing, where everyone is so anxious driven, they need answers right away. There's little effort put in, or planning, or strategic planning. And that's why I think chess is such a great thing. I hope one day it does become at least an elective in public school curriculum. Some schools it's an elective; it's part of the curriculum already. In the city, they're private companies, and but I do think that why students were cheating at coaching sessions, and again it's numerous ones, and probably more than we're aware of, just because they're being trained at a young age to use technology to come up with the answers. and they don't even know maybe they're doing it. It's subconsciously, they see a problem and they have to go to the device. It's almost like just it's sad. It's sad if that's the case, and if a kid is doing because they want to show off or they want to feel like they're important, that's a little emotional, and that could be overworked. But if the answer is, that could be a solution, and that could be fixed. But if someone's doing it because that's just the way they're used to getting information, it's scary. It really is.
That's definitely a part of it. But to be fair, to look at the big picture, you also have adults doing this as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I could tell you firsthand. Yeah, technology has led to cheating. I seen it like 10 years ago. At the Long Island Industrial Chess League, there was a player who kept going into the bathroom like after every move.
Oh, so you had a toilet gate incident.
Yeah, yes. And the opponent, one of my teammates, I think he was on my team at the time, like he got up and he went into the bathroom with a league officer, and they found the player like on his phone, like near the urinal. Okay. And they confronted him, and the player admitted to cheating with the phone. And this is Neil, this is an industrial chess league. This is no money involved at all. Nothing is at stake. No money at stake, but yet he's cheating. So if this is happening with students at lessons, this is happening at social leagues, it's happening at cash tournaments.
I'm sorry to jump in, but this is what I was saying before. It's not just the traditional thought is that, well, the cheating, it's because of the big money prizes. It's clearly much more pervasive than that. I mean, it's for all levels, even if there's no meaningful incentive. It's just about ego or about feelings or, whatever.
And I feel like, if I was to, one of the things that if I ever got back to playing chess actively in tournaments and going to some of these out-of-state tournaments, and maybe I want to try to make, I don't know, a goal of maybe making FM. I got to play in these strong players. I got to play these tournaments. And here I am playing in a ballroom, and people are walking around with, stockfish that's stronger than Magnus Carlsen. So all they have to do is go to the bathroom for just one time, right? At a high level, maybe 1 or 2 times go to the bathroom critical positions, and that's it. Like they know all the moves, and then how the continuations, and it's game over. And one time in Rochester about 12 years ago, there was a player from Long Island. He was I think he was a teenager, but he was rapidly rising in rating. He went from 2,100 to like 2,500 fairly quickly. And there was, suspicions that he may have been cheating. And one time at Rochester, he was in the open section and he was like beating GMs. And in one game he was playing, he had long hair, he had like a hat, so it was most likely he had some audio device where people were whispering the moves to him. But you can't ask him; they couldn't get him to take anything off, and there was no reason, or you can't accuse someone if there's no, you can't accuse somebody without a reason why. And but I was thinking, like, where on him is the camera? If he long hair and someone is in a hotel room whispering the moves to him after they're putting the moves into the engine. When the person in the room, like, where are they getting this information from? Where's the video? So I looked at him, and he was always leaning in with his wrist towards the chessboard, and he had a big watch on, and I was able to look at it, and it said G-Shock. And then I found out that G-Shock, I went online, I left the tournament hall, and I went online. I wasn't even playing in this event. I went with at this event. I think I was either with Jared Tavares or Rob Guevara. I forgot which one. And G-Shock makes a watch that has a spy. It's a spy setting. What has a camera. So and he beat a GM fairly easy in some like obscure Sicilian opening, and I mentioned to the director, like, something might not be right here, and look, he's wearing this watch which has a camera on it, and he's leaning it in. And then they asked him about it. The tournament directors went to him, and they asked him about it, and he decided to continue the tournament, but he couldn't like wear the watch, and he then played, I think at the time on that round, and I know he beat GM. The game that he beat that I saw him beating was GM Perelstein, Eugene Perelstein, solid G Grandmaster, right? And then in the following round, when he wasn't wearing the watch, I think he lost. Not a good game to at the time. I am Brian Smith, who's now a Grandmaster, and And after he lost the game, I think he just withdrew from the tournament. And I don't know. I think it led to, they found out more information, and I think the USAF might have banned him for a year, maybe. And he unfortunately he passed away. And there's probably some greater issues going on, and I didn't know that at the time, and it's a sad thing. It's a sad thing, but that's just a case that I seen at an out-of-state tournament, and now we know the big event that if you said chess cheating and any search engine, and you ask the general public or chess club members, that they'll say Carlson Neiman, right? Because it's got so much attention. It's the biggest accusation, and yet there's no real proof that we've seen. I don't know if Neiman cheated or not, but what I can say is that since that event, Neiman has maintained his 2,700 rating, and he's been under heavy scrutiny. So it's very unlikely that if he cheated in Carlson game, that he hasn't been cheating since, but he's still maintaining his 2,700 rating. Now, maybe he's a 2,700 player. He's a super GM. Maybe he's using it. He knows how to use it just one time during the game, and that makes a difference. And I think on one podcast, I think there was a Fabiano mentioned that if you take a 2,700 player and you give them access at the point that they wanted to just one time during a game, that play, like in the round robin of the top players, that player who has access to that 2,700 player will probably get a performance rating of 2,900, just because that one time makes the difference at that level. So, I mean, the thing is, with Neiman, he's under so much scrutiny that since this Neiman, accusation, since the Carlson accusation, that if he's still doing it, then he's brilliant. That he's probably like the greatest cheater of all time, right? Because how is he getting away with this if he's still actively doing this? So, it's we'll see what's going to happen with the future. And I know there's the lawsuit issue and all of that. And I know on online cheating, they're cheating all the time on chess.com. Like, I won't even play. Like, one of the perks, I guess, of being a titled player is that chess.com gives you a free diamond. All title players get free diamond memberships to chess.com. I mean, when I realized that, I signed on. This was like a year or two after I became National Master, when the Federation mailed me the certificate, which was nice. But I felt that was nice. It was a nice, it's something. A nice free lifetime membership. You get all access to all the content, right? So I was playing on chess.com, 3-minute blitz or three-minute blitz with 2-second increment or 5-minute games. And I just know like so many, they're cheating, right? They're just, you could tell, like 1,100 ratings, or, they're just coming up with these brilliant moves. And so now I said, you know what? Now I play on my phone. Now I just play on my phone on chess.com. I play Bullet, which is 1-minute chess. No increment. Because of the cheating I've encountered. And there's times, Neil, God's honest truth, I could show you my history on chess.com, all the notifications I get in Bullet. There's times, and I'm not playing in like Bullet tournaments. There's no money involved. I'm just, seeking a game. I'm rated like 2,300 Bullet. So I'll put in, I want to play a player from 2,250. I seek 2,250. And then the high end, I put infinity. There's no limit. So I'm playing, fairly, high-rated players, right? 2250, 23, 24, 2500s. And in Bullet, there's times every 5 Bullet games that I play, one of them is cheating. Because then a couple hours later, I get all these notifications that we've detected that your opponent violated the fair play policy, and they've readjusted my rating. So after like 3 hours of playing, I'm getting all these rating points back I lost. It's like a rebate program.
And you're telling me this is happening about 20% of the time?
Sometimes, yeah. If I'm playing, sometimes it's happening 20% of the time. And they're still like, how come there's no lifetime ban for these players? Like, and they come back on sometimes. So what they do is, how do you cheat in 1-minute chess? Okay, and I couldn't figure this out. You can't relay moves; you run out of time, right? So some of these players, what they're doing is they play the first 5 or 6 moves random, and somehow they're hooking their accounts up to the computer to play for them. I don't know how they do it, because then it's like automatic.
That's stupid cheating, because chess.com, they can detect that. Like if you have an engine, I believe, I mean, I don't know, but from what it's my understanding don't take this as gospel, but they have, as part of chess.com's cheat detection, they can tell when you have chess.com on your phone or your computer, like let's say you're playing on your desktop or your laptop, if on that same device you also have a chess engine running, I believe that chess.com can detect that. So that's probably what happened with those guys, I think.
Yeah, definitely. But somehow there are ones that are doing that. But then there's also, maybe they're doing that for the 3 minute, 5 minute games. But there are bots that are hooked up somehow to the to the engines, where the engine they just turn to flick a switch. They hit like I don't know, they hit a button, because I've had it where I'm playing an opponent and they're making moves like instantaneously, like flawlessly, and then I'll look at them and they have 23, 2400, 2500 bullet rating, and I look at their blitz rating, 800, 1,000. Daily chess, 1,200.
They're somehow getting the computer to play the game for them, basically.
Yes, under their account. Yes, and I report it, and I report it, and then maybe an hour later I get the notification that they cheated. They're in violation of the fair policy. So I don't know. I don't know much about computer programming, but some, these ones with the bots do. But there has to be. There has to be measures taken for the online cheating that are more severe. If you're playing in a tournament and there's cash prizes and you're an adult and you're caught cheating, like there has to be a lifetime ban from that site. Maybe information could be shared to other online chess companies as well. Now title players, like when I got the Diamond membership for chess.com, like I had to show them ID. Here's my name, here's my USCF certificate. So they have that information. And there are title players that are cheating.
Well, they banned a ton. Wasn't there? I mean, I remember reading something where chess.com, I don't know if it's hundreds, but it's a quite a large number of titled players that they know cheated, and even just general accounts, just players of all levels. Doesn't chess.com ban like several hundred, or they what's the word? They delete like several hundred accounts a day, or they remove them from the server or something like that?
Yeah, I believe so.
5 or 6, it's like several hundred players a day are, their accounts are whatever, suspended, or they're removed from the server, whatever the term is.
Yeah, see, now the thing is, someone could always make another email with a title player, like that's your information. Like once you're banned, like that's it. Because to come back on, if you want the perks of the free membership, you have to provide ID. But other people that aren't title players, they can make a new email and then make a new account. So I think there has to be some type of detection. These online companies have to have they need to block your IP address for the repeat offenders. I think that's what they have to do, because otherwise they're just gonna make new emails and keep cheating. It's why are these players? I mean, again, the non-cash tournaments. What's the incentive for? It's just so that maybe they want to get a high rating. It's like an ego thing. Oh, look on the listing. I'm the highest player for my country. I'm top 100. Maybe it's for those reasons, right? Because what other point is there? Like it doesn't. So it's just again, it's something that the company is gonna have to get better at, because again, if they're really trying to promote chess, and the players want to make sure that they're playing online, they're playing people, not computers. It's you're not going to learn anything just by getting clobbered by a 3,000 a 3,300 rated computer, right? And we'll talk about that later when we get to training and things like that. About I think I have some good ideas for playing strength, and what we could be looking at to improve. But
speaking of cheating, you dealt with a sandbagging situation. So tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Okay, so when I was a kid, the sandbagging accusations that most people I think locally are came up because I was really having a lot of results that we could say were bipolar. After I got done with college, which was in like 2000. I was already an expert at that time, right? I made expert when I first started college. I became an expert for the first time. And then I was in college. I wasn't really taking it too seriously. I would play on and off at times. I didn't have any goals. Um, a lot of players thought I was master strength at the time, because even though I was rated, like, let's say my rating went under expert in the 1900s, I would have results where, I was getting performance ratings like 2,300. I'm beating a couple strong players in the same tournament. He's 1,900. How could that be? And I know I understand that, because it's based on statistics, and so it was always like, which Nick Panico is going to show up, the one that's like master strength, or the one that's going to be on extended tilt mode that would lose to like B players regularly, So, and again, this was part of my, I think, weakness, or something I had to work on to get National Master, is that I would let a loss affect me, or I wasn't taking it too seriously, or the weaker players, I wouldn't put my full effort into the games. I would think, okay, I have a small edge, and eventually they're going to cave, or they're going to blunder, and all of a sudden I miss something, and now I'm getting a piece trapped, or I can't get back to get a pass pawn. Little things like that, and the game's over, right? Even if I'm playing someone 1500, right? So they're still good enough to take advantage of those mishaps. But the earliest accusation of me sandbagging was when I was actually in high school. It wasn't a high school club. I never played in high school chess clubs. So I was at the Marshall Chess Club, and I was playing in a Marshall qualifier tournament for the club championship. It was a qualifier where if you're under 2200, you had to get a plus score in the qualifier to play in the Marshall championship. There was a lot of strong players in it. So in the last round of the qualifier tournament, I was playing none other than Lev Zilbermans. And I was black, and I knew he was going to play the black Mardima. So I'm like, what can I do? So he played d4, I played knight f6. He plays knight c3. And now normally I would play d5. I would try to go into a slot, but I knew he was going to play the Demer. So after knight c3, I played on move 2, I played e6, saying, okay, if he wants to go into a French defense, he could, but he didn't. He played f3 on move 3. So I played d5. He played e4. I played c5. He played e5, knight f to d7. Then he played f4, f3 to f4. So I got him into a French position where he wasted a tempo. He could have just played f4 at one go from f2 to f4, but he thought maybe that one move he would trick me. So I went to a French and I outplayed him and I won the game, and I got to qualify into the Marshall Championship. So in round 1 of the Marshall Championship, I got paired against an FM, and the FM actually was from Long Island, but he was playing in the tournament. He was over, I think, 2300 at the time, and I was 1700, and I was white, and the opening was a Rui Lopez Zaitev variation, and it was a very topical opening at the time because a few years before that, Kasparov and Karpov were playing it a lot in their matches. And I remember I was going over those games when I was trying to learn more about E4. And this was back in in my dad's type of style of using the ECO, using the informants, going over all the games. And I did that for all the Kasparov-Karpov games with the Zaitev. And this was like a couple of weeks later, I'm getting paired as white, and now I see the black as the Zaitev, and I'm like, wow, this is great, I'm playing something that I really know, like, in and out. And I won the game, like, pretty, like, I don't know. I mean, it was like a 1700 that was playing, like, like 2500 level. And that did happen one time in another, like in Marshall, Rui Lopez, where it was a Friday night blitz tournament at the Marshall, and the club director, Doug Blitzy, he's like, oh, are you a grandmaster? I'm like, no, I'm like 1800.
Wait, the Blitz tournament was directed by someone named Doug Blitzy?
Yeah, Doug Blitzy. He right, Blitzy, and nice guy. He was the director.
Get it, Blitzy? I'm okay. That's funny. Okay.
But I just knew it so well that you would think, oh, this kid's like a grandmaster, and so then I played the game like like a really high level, and he couldn't believe it. My opponent, after the game, he went to the directors and said, this guy's a sandbagger. This kid's a sandbagger. And I don't know, they didn't do anything. They just looked at me, and I got paired for my next round. I played round 2, and I was black against a young, talented player. His name was an FM. He was 2400. His name was Erez Klein. He was from Forest Hills, Queens, and he passed away, unfortunately. A nice guy and a nice player. I lost to him, and then I had like a mediocre tournament. So I think all the sandbagging accusations went away. This was just a young person who put time into this opening. He figured it out. He played a great game, and that was it. So that was an early experience I had with being accused of a sandbagger. But now years later, right, I was reported to CCA for sandbagging, and see when I played when I was in right after high school, my first year of college, I went from in October of 1996, I was 1,800 even flat. And then by June, I went to over 2,100. So in about 7 months, I had a over 300 increase in rating. And that was, I guess that was a critical time for me. If I wanted to keep improving, we'll talk about that later, that, I could have probably gotten even stronger, I think. But, I went to college, I stopped playing, and my rating went up and down. I go under 2000, 2000, under 2000, back over 2000, 2100, and on like that. And I think there was just one point happened locally where I went under 2000, and I got reported to Bill Goichberg that I should have a floor for my rating of 2000 or 2100. I forgot what it was. And I was shocked. I'm like, how am I being accused of a sandbagger when I have history of my rating just going, this is like, you could look at my history and see like this happens to this player. And then I'm also thinking the second thing is, if I'm a sandbagger, how come I've never played in a World Open before? How come I haven't played any of these big cash tournaments? Like, what's my incentive for sandbagging? And I went to Bill, and I discussed these things with him, and he removed the floor. He probably just did a little research. He looked me up, my history, and he's like, okay, this guy isn't winning money at my tournaments, and like he removed the floor, and that was it. That was all that came of it. So I think a good lesson is that if you're accused of things, and you know that you're not doing anything wrong, and just try to go about it the right way. And I wasn't upset really at the person that accused me of it, and I never really thought of anything too much about it, and maybe later on it just gave me some motivation to maybe when I tried to get to master, that try to prove people wrong, or just try to not have these slips happen to lower players, and things like that. And I think there are players that are very solid, that they don't like fluctuate too much. But there's other players where they're completely up and down, and that was me, for after college until I was in my 30s. That was happening a lot. My rating was going up and down. So basically, just if I had a loss, I have to come back next week, play another game at the club, and I'm like, I'm not too interested. And I was always more interested in playing the stronger players, more of a challenge, and try to do my best there. But getting to master, I had to make sure that I was consistent against the lower players, and had to grind out games, and had to defend positions if I was a little bit worse in. So all of those things came back to me and helped me eventually get to master. So all lessons learned, and at a young age, and you try to do things better for the future.
Now, Nick, I have to ask you about this. I can't have a podcast with Nick Panico without asking you about this and kind of busting your chops a little bit. Okay. So what is with this ridiculous obsession you have with the bishop and knight mate? I mean, really? All right. So go ahead, lay it on me.
Right. So I think anyone locally knows about this. And I think for the listeners that are not local or don't know me, and they'll think, wait, how could somebody, how can a player have an obsession with the bishop and knight mate? And so it actually began in, I believe it was 1993 and 94, the amateur team tournament. I was fairly new to tournament chess at that point. And I think it was about 1,500. And I had a game where I was losing. I had a king, rook, and one pawn. My opponent had a king, knight, bishop, and two pawns. And the kings were for like a good distance between them. So I came up with a way where I gave up my rook. And my opponent was like about 1,500 too. I was on board 4. So I gave up my rook for his two pawns that were connected, past pawns. And he got my last remaining pawn he got in between. So it fizzled out where he had the king, bishop, and knight, and I had just a king. And he asked me over the board. He's like, "This is a draw, right?" I didn't know what to say. This is a tournament game, and he's asking me. I said, "I think so." I said, "I don't know."
You're not really supposed to discuss the game with your opponent. Yeah.
That's the thing. Even though I knew, because when I did my dad, when we were studying and when I was teaching me as a beginner with chess fundamentals, that was one of the end games I knew bishop and knight could mate, but I didn't know what to say. I'm playing on a team event, like, So after the game, I went to the tournament director and I said, no, my opponent, I told him what happened, and my opponent asked me this during the game, and I said I didn't know what to say. But the tournament director, he's like, what you said was fine, because he shouldn't be talking to you during the game, So that was my early experience with the bishop and knight, and I never saw it come up in an over the board game. Since that time that I was on the receiving end of it, and I know there's strong players that say it's not worth studying because of the frequency; it just doesn't come up. There's other things that you can spend your time to learning, and I actually don't think it takes as much time as people think that it does. But I remember years later, I think it was like 2000, maybe 2005, some point on ICC. They had these training bots for elementary mates and endgames, and King Bishop Knight was one of them. So what you could do is either you could play the engine where you have the bishop and knight and you're just practicing how to mate, or you could seek a challenge against another player and you both could play like both sides of it. And I used to do both. And then I remember like doing that and then thinking, this is, a little difficult. Like I'm never going to be able to figure this out. And then I started like looking either at a video or like a book, and I figured out the pattern, how to do it. And once I got the king on the back rank, how to walk him over, that was like really pretty quickly. It was just getting him to the back that is the challenge for most players. And so I began to practice it. And as I was beginning to practice it, this was basically, I was learning this at the same time of the sandbagging accusations. So I began to get really good at it, and eventually I was able to, it was like king and queen against king. I knew it that well. So as the sandbagging accusations were continuing at the local clubs, I noticed that there was always like players and spectators that were watching my games. And it was starting to get to the point where I was playing like a 1400, and I was up a ton of material. And I was like, again, I'm an expert, 2100, and they wouldn't resign. And then I'm having people watching my games that are strong players, 16, 1700, they know I'm going to win this game. So what are they watching for? So the only reason they could be watching is they thought that I was probably going to lose material because they think, in their minds, they think I'm really a sandbagger. So they think he's going to try to find a way to lose the game. And, that didn't happen. So there was one night that this kept happening. I'm like, I was just in a bad mood, had a long day, and I decided, I'm going to try to trick the spectators a little bit. So I was playing a game. I was up some material. They started coming over to my board looking, and then I started giving back some of the material. And then as I was going back to the material, they were going to the director saying, look, it's happening. He's going to be sandbagging this game. I know this is the game that he's going to, go sandbag. So I got into an ending where I had a king, bishop, and knight. Again, is this the ethical thing to do, right? Give up material to win a game a different way that you know how to do it. I don't know, but I know that the accusation of the sandbagging, players not, resigning, spectators watching. So, all of this could be questioned as to what's, ethically the correct way in chess. But I know the spectators thought it was really it was getting to the point of being funny because they would see I was winning the games with the bishop and knight. And there was sometimes it was happening multiple weeks in a row. So, I just thought it was kind of funny of the spectators. And it was I don't know. It was I don't know. In a way, it was I was giving them free lessons. It's I don't know. Hopefully they learned something from it because they were watching it all the time. And I remember it both at the Marshall Chess Club. And I remember, I don't know if it was against, I think I would practice it. I forgot if it was, I think it was Alex Lenderman, I think, that I would sometimes in Blitz, we would practice it upstairs at the Marshall. I remember I used to play Fabiano when he was really little in Blitz games before tournaments, but I don't think it was that far back. So it might have been Alex Lenderman, who was older at the point. We would practice it. But I remember Jay Bonin and Asa Hoffman, and they both claimed that they never knew how to do the bishop and knight mate. I don't think, one's a strong FM, Asa Hoffman, Jay Bonin, and I am. Bonin's been playing forever. Bonin's played more games probably. But now Bonin's had to have it come up, right? But no, supposedly he never had it.
I'm embarrassed. I forgot what he was just on the podcast. I don't think what did he say? He had it come up once. I'm blanking right now, and he was just on here.
I don't know if he ever. I don't know. I've listened to it,
but I know he said, and this is true, a lot of Masters and titled players have messed it up. They're not able, excuse me, to do it within the 50 moves.
There's grandmasters that have not been able to do it over the board.
Right. And the thing is, most players, it's my understanding, statistically, most players will never even have the opportunity to do it in their games, unless, like it's your kind of thing, unless they somehow try to engineer it so that they have that. But I mean, through the course of a normal game, it's kind of like getting a royal flush in poker. Like most people will go their lifetime and never see it.
And I think a point of it was that, I always like chess, compositions, like where it shows like the beauty, the art, or the geometry of chess. And I used to look at some of those like Trotsky puzzles and Kasparian, things like that. And it shows the game, like the beauty of it. And in a way, it was like a reverse composition for me to find out. Like, I remember listening to a podcast where you had Rob Guevara on. And a big part of that podcast was, why keep playing in games that most likely, 90% of the time or more, maybe they're going to result in a draw. But Rob, what he said, and this is true. I know Rob really well, great friend of mine, and he. He just loves playing. He loves, because it's like a little time away from other things in life, and he enjoys that time at the chessboard. And it was kind of like that for me too. And if I'm playing a game where I'm up a lot of material, and normally, okay, they don't resign, where I'll go on. If they resign, I'm gonna go do something else, go eat, whatever. But they don't resign. I'm still at the chessboard. So I'm thinking, okay, if I have the time here, I'm at the chessboard. Maybe there's a way I could get back the material. Like in a way, sometimes it wasn't easy to give back the material in a way that they would take it. It'll lead to a bishop and knight mate. But I would practice it a lot and things like that, and got really pretty good. But I think that there is a lot of value to studying it, to knowing it, because there's in terms of endgames, how the bishop and knight are in harmony. They could set up barriers. There's a fortress. Where a king and queen cannot beat a bishop and knight, because let's say there's a king on h8, a bishop on g7, and a knight on e5. If the king and queen the opposing king and queen are on the outside flanks of those of that square outside of that box, they will not be able to win the game because of that fortress. And I did see it come up locally in a game where I think Rob Guevara was playing a strong expert. Ilya Solankovich, and the game went into that type of ending, and Ilya knew that formation, and they played all night, and Rob wouldn't take the draw, and Ilya offered him a draw, and Ilya's like, okay, Rob, we'll stay here all night, and
Rob won't take him. Yeah.
Right, and it led to a draw, and he knew that defense. So things like that with barriers, controlling squares, how the bishop and knight can make a cutoff. Also, there's a lot of openings where sometimes it's unbalanced, where one player, like I know there's in the Scotch game, I think in the Mises variation, where this is one game I played against Berg, where I gave up a bishop and knight, but he has a rook and a pawn. A lot of those unbalanced things where they could, the end game could trickle down, because, maybe you make a mistake and, your opponent gives up his rook, like I did in the amateur team, where there was two passed pawns, and now you're left with bishop and knight. So sometimes the players will, if they'll angle for that, they'll push you to that ending, because I'm not just going to let you roll your pawns down the board. I'm going to lose. I'll take my chances, and let's see if you know how to do the bishop and knight. So I think there is some practicality to to knowing that mate. And eventually, I did stop doing it. There was one point I remember I got so good at it so quick that I was playing in a CCA side event. It was a blitz tourney. It was late at night. It was after the second round, or after the second round on, I think, Saturday night. It was like 11 o'clock. I had an opponent, wouldn't resign. It was a 5-minute blitz game, and I had like less than a minute on my clock, and I had a king, bishop, and pawn. They had a king. And now this was a blitz game, no delay at the time. This was years ago. And I promoted the pawn to a knight, but I only had like 50 seconds on my clock. And it was just something, I guess, automatically I was entrained to doing at that point. And I remember people watching the game. This wasn't local players. This was at a state tournament, and they started taking. They had their phones. They were taking video of it. So somewhere, I'm sure out there, there's a video of it. And so they were all laughing, like, "Oh, this guy just like lost a game where he should have just, he grabbed the wrong piece." And then I tried to sell it to him. I was like, "Oh," I was laughing. I'm like, "Oh," I was like, I put my hand in my head. So I'm like, "Oh," and then my clock is ticking. I'm down to like 33 seconds, and then I blitz out all the moves to mate, and I have like 3 seconds on my clock, and people are like laughing. They're like, "Yo," they're like, "How did he do this so quick?" They're yelling down the hall, "You see that player? He's sick!" And I never saw anything like that, and that was the last time that I did it. So I got to the point where I was able to do it with no delay in like under 30 seconds. It was like rapid fire. I mean, it was repetition. It's a pattern. It's pattern recognition to the extreme. That's what it is.
All right. So, Nick, just for our final segment, this has been a great conversation, by the way. Do you have any tips, improvement advice for club players, anything you want to address? I know you kind of touched on some of it on and off, but just to kind of wrap things up, if you could offer us your words of wisdom for improvement, that would be great.
Yeah, I think that, again, there's all different levels of players, even at the club level, from, very beginners, maybe up to the expert level. And I think that the enjoyment should come first. You really don't, you always want to make sure that you're enjoying something. And then second is that, if you want to improve, what is the goal? And I think that nowadays, and I look at from when I first started playing, is that the key takeaways, and this is both, I think, adults and scholastic players, is that there comes a point. I know Alex Lendeman in a different podcast mentioned one time that for his career, there was a specific point that he knew what he would have made the most improvement at. And I know that it happened for me when I went from 1,800 to over 2,100 in 7 months. If I had coaching, if I put time into it, I think maybe I could have got to FM. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't at all. But that was the key time in my life to make the most improvement. So take advantage of the time that you have if you really want to have a certain goal. To get the most out of that time. Because again, I do believe that everybody could improve no matter what age they are. Maybe it's just not at the rate of a certain point in your life. So that's the thing I think to pay attention to. And then I think that another part is that there's so much information now, and for openings, like let's say someone wants to learn the London system. I remember when I first started the London system, there was two books. One by Andy Soltis, it was a yellow paperback, and then a couple of years later, another one came out by Kovacevic and Johansson. That was a really good book. Now there's so many more, and the videos and all of that. But a great way to learn an opening now, I think, is you could go on chess.com. And I mean, all the strong players, GMs are playing there. You could search up openings by players. Now, this is both for games that were played over the board in tournaments, but also games on chess.com themselves. So, for example, if you want to learn the London system, you could search GM Gata Kamsky's games. I mean, Kamsky is one of the premier player that has played the London system, really at so many points in his life. You could search his games, and yes, they're blitz games. So you're not looking at the end games necessarily or the middle games, but for world class player, like he knows his openings, and you'll see different ways that he plays that openings against different setups. Let's say for black. So I think that's a great thing. That's a great tool to do. I think, there's so much information again from when I first learned to play. I think another thing is that if you have friends locally or maybe far away, and maybe kids are doing this now, is that you could practice certain end games. Maybe you go through 100 end games that you must know. Right, a great book, and I've used that for some teaching. And some end game, not every one, but a few end games that you maybe your friends find interesting, you could practice against each other online. So that's where I think online really is interesting, because to meet socially, to practice chess, to study chess with people, that's very time consuming, and sometimes the distance prevents that. But now I think with the internet, that's overcome, and these options to train are a lot different than the past. And I think that not some players feel like maybe they need a coach to make a certain goal. Maybe they don't. I think that if you're looking at getting a coach, I think sometimes that you could find a player that's maybe just one rating class above you, And that might be an ideal coach-student relationship. I had one adult student who was 1900, and I was over 2100 at the time. And when he said he wanted to take lessons from me, I was a little shocked at first because I never thought that you could have a student teacher coach relationship like that, where that, would that be enough, right? I mean, just 300 rating points. And there's someone I met from the Long Island Chess League, and I would go over his house once a week, and I found that very rewarding, because as a teacher, like, I had to be sharp. Like, I just couldn't go through the motions. Like, I really, because I know, like, he's putting effort in, and he's like, he's a good player in the 1900. That if I just make, if I'm not really paying attention, he's gonna say, well, what about this? And now I'm gonna be caught off guard. How's that gonna make me look? So it challenged me, So if you could find, where you can challenge the teacher, and then the students, that's when that small differences are enough, and the student will pick up on those things. So I know, for me, I know locally, like when I was making National Master, like sometimes I would analyze a few games with FM Tony Renna, okay, and 2300 player FM, and that was enough. Like, I didn't need a grandmaster. Those few things helped me, just casually. You could pick up things like that, and it'd be interesting to see if there was ever studies done on, like, these kids that get these GM coaches as compared to, let's say, a whole bunch of other subjects where the students are training with someone just above them, and seeing how it pans out. Because I don't think you always need an IM or GM coach online. I think that if you could find someone where you could have a relationship, you can discuss things, and you'll pick up on those things. And then what's going to happen, Neil, is that the student is going to get to the point where they're going to find some weaknesses in the thinking patterns of the teacher, and that's going to make them grow maybe quicker than where they wouldn't have that if they couldn't find some weaknesses in the teacher that's at a much higher level. And I think then, maybe, it'd be interesting to see, someone, 1600, they have an 1800 teacher, they get to 1800, now they get a 2000 teacher. How would that go? I think that there's something to that. So I think coaching, and again, it's all based on goals and, what you're looking to get. I think that some players probably don't need a coach based on what their goals are, and I think others do. It would help them facilitate getting there at a quicker point, or maximizing the rate of growth at a certain time. I think for me, when I got from 1800 to over 2100 in 7 months, I think if I had a coach, I think that, they would have corrected my weak points in my game. These gambits, they have to go. Okay, yes, I mean, the players didn't know the reputations back then, but again, I was limiting myself because I didn't know end games. I didn't know defensive skills. I didn't know about pawn structures. And to this day, there's a lot of players that I know personally that I think definitely could have made National Master. Maybe they still can, but what prevented them from making their experts? What prevented them from getting to National Master? And I did. And some of these players, the experts, they have far more understanding of chess than I do. They know the history of the world championship matches, and they follow the games. They're great students of the game, and I got a lot of respect for that. And that's something at a young age maybe I wasn't aware of. And maybe with that time when I had my growth, that explosion, if I would have had a coach and I could have seen the history of chess progress, that could have probably did a lot for me at that age. But again, I was going to school, and there's trade-offs and there's things like that. So I don't regret it. Again, I don't know. Maybe I would have been more interested in just chess and that's it. And maybe I would have gotten to FMIM and not have science degrees. So there's always trade-offs, and so maximize your time, enjoy it, and I think that be well-rounded. I know for me that when I got over 2100, I was playing the London system, as we discussed, and then I started going to other openings. London sometimes got strong players, maybe they neutralize it, it got a little dry, and I need to be a little more dynamic. Nowadays, you could play the London dynamically. There's different ways to play it. I think GM Simon Williams has some great courses on it, and so when I was trying to get to National Master, I was playing different time controls, game 30, game 90, the longer controls. I was trying to get well balanced in all of them, and then I started playing the Birds opening. I started playing F4, and there was one point I remember where on a Monday, on a tournament on Sunday, I lost to FM Pridman, and then Tuesday night, no, I'm sorry. The first time I played him was on a Tuesday evening at the Marshall Masters, and I lost. is black. And I'm like, oh, I had a good game. I lost. I'm like, oh, I want to play FM Prickman again. I looked up a tournament because he played all the time. So on Wednesday, the day after, I drove to White Plains to play in Leaf Pressman's Game 30 tournament. I got the white pieces, and I looked at I was learning the Birds opening, and I played Pribman and I beat him. And I'm like, oh, I got revenge, from the night before, And then Thursday night, I played at the Marshall Chess Club, 4 rated games tonight. So now they were playing our third time in 3 nights, and the game ended in a draw. And then on the weekend, I played him on Saturday. I played him again. I was playing a lot, and I won that game. So I got like 2.5, 1.5 in 1 week. I played an opponent 4 times in 1 week in 4 different tournaments. I don't know if Jay Bonin ever did that. If he's played the same, I wonder how many times Jay Bonin has played the same opponent in like 1 week. And but that was just an example again of I was playing the Dutch defense is black, and kind of it's like the the Birds, but you're black, and French defense, and I started playing different openings, different structures, and things that suited me, and that's how I ultimately made the goal from expert to master. So I think I always had the knowledge, but it was just the way to do it. I think that made the difference of 2 decades where I just stayed 2000, 2100, 1900, and then finally 36 years old, right? 36 is not a young age for chess, not really anymore, and but it still can be done, right? I think Rob Guevara, right? He also became national master in his 40s. So there's always ways to improve no matter what age that you are. And nowadays, there's so many tools available. You have to find the one that works for you, just like students in school. Like some are auditory learners, some are visual learners, or tactile, hands-on. Same thing goes with chess.
National Master Nick Panico, thanks for being on the podcast. We covered a lot of ground, Nick, so that was a very cool conversation. Thank you.
I enjoyed it. Excellent. I enjoyed it, Neil, really.
For those of you at home, as always, we really appreciate you listening. And as always, I hope you win your next game. Have a great day, everybody.